Early contests build momentum for 2024 contenders seeking the White House. C-SPAN offers unfiltered coverage of events leading into early primaries and caucuses. Get access to speeches and results with the free app, C-SPAN Now, or watch live on the C-SPAN networks.
Hey everybody, it's Rob Benedict.
And Richard Spade Jr.
Welcome to a very special edition of the Supernatural Then and Now podcast.
What makes it so special, Bubba?
Well, we are talking about the Supernatural prequel offshoot spinoff called the Winchesters.
You know, it's interesting calling it a spinoff because it's a prequel, so really it's either or, right? But I guess it's both. It's kind of both.
It's a show that's carrying on the legacy, and we're so excited. The pilot just premiered last night. I'm sure you all watched it, and if you haven't, what are you waiting for? So we're going to get right into it and talk all about the pilot and the show. We've got with us Jensen Ackles, executive producer of the show, and of course, Dean from Supernatural. We've got Meg Donnelly, who plays...
She's playing Mary Winchester.
Yes, she is. And Drake Rodger.
He plays John Winchester.
And Glenn Winter.
He's the man who directed the pilot episode that you just watched last night.
Let's get into it.
I mean, here we are having a conversation about the long-awaited spinoff from the mothership, the mega hit that was Supernatural. And a long time coming, but here we are. We're on the precipice of this ship launching. My question right out of the gate for you, Jensen, and it would be for you and Donnelly. So, yes, you've been Dean Winchester for 15 years, but this is a pretty big departure in reinventing the world and putting on a producer hat and a creator hat. How did that work, teaming up with Donnelly? Like, I don't think you and your wife have worked in that capacity yet, or maybe you have and I didn't know it, but it's a pretty big leap forward to take that into a family, different kind of family business. And then how did the whole thing come about?
I mean, look, Donnelly, and you guys know her well enough to know she's constantly producing everything. What she's doing right now. She's running a family. She's a multifaceted, talented, strong woman who has a bandwidth that I don't comprehend. So for her to take something on like this, sure, that makes sense. She's constantly got a lot of things going on, but creatively, she and I, we've never gone down this road of conceptualizing something and then kind of bringing it to light. Well, I guess we've got 3 children, so that's...
I mean, sure.
You did a little conceptualizing, did you? That's hot. That's the I was told to laugh at all of Jensen's jokes laugh.
He's my producer. I've got to help out.
I know.
That's it.
Yeah, it's in the contract.
In the deal memo.
Yeah.
This going down this road has certainly been an experience. It's been a wild ride. Dealing with what we had to deal with from kind of behind the curtain was not something that either of us were overly familiar with. And by that, I mean the casting process, the interview process, going through the studios and the network notes and all this stuff. And, you know, Glenn was there through a lot of that. And it's quite a bumpy ride.
Can you walk us through that a little bit, Jensen? I mean, it's such a huge thing. These 2 characters are the show, and they're iconic characters already that have been established in Supernatural. And so I know this was a big, big deal. And you did such a great job, by the way. Drake and Meg are both so great. And so, like, I could see Mary and Meg, you know, and Drake, you kind of remind me, and when you're acting, you remind me of a little bit of Jared. So it's like, I can see that Sam would be his son. So it's such a big job to cast this thing. So, you know, Glenn and Jensen, like, what was that process like?
You know, this is a very important property for Warner Brothers and for the CW. And so to go down this road, there were a lot of, for lack of better terms, cooks in the kitchen, but a lot of people had strong opinions about what they thought for this show because it was such an important property. So we had to fight. We had to fight for a lot of different reasons and for a lot of different people. And it wasn't easy, but anything that's worthwhile should be a little difficult, I think. And, you know, Glenn can speak to this as well, but just the constant barrage of tapes and then feedback and then discussions and then more tapes and then more feedback and more. So it was a lot. I mean, Glenn, do you remember we
saw hundreds and hundreds, and it makes you realize
hundreds
that people always say like, oh, you know, how was it so hard to make it in Hollywood, et cetera? And you see it, you realize like there's a lot of 20-something actors and actresses out there that are good, that are solid, and have different looks and are beautiful or have character or have quirks to their style that are, intriguing, or just solid actors. But to find that person, I was really struck on this because I've never been so intimately involved this deeply early in the process in the casting for the two leads, because often you come to a project and sometimes it can be kind of halfway formed, especially if you're spinning something off. And to find these guys, it was humbling because you just sort of go like, oh, okay, I get it now. Like, I get it why you can't just move to Hollywood and become an actor, because it's real to find that. Just there's a lot of people that we saw that were good, but you want that thing. And then on top of that, you want the chemistry. So once we found a short list of people, then you do I don't know if people realize or not, but there's the chemistry part of the whole thing. And because our show is very much about these two characters and their relationship together, much more important than, chemistry possibly on another sort of pilot as well. So that was really, you have someone that's great on their own and they have something that's intriguing, and then you mix it with the other person. It's like, okay, that doesn't work. So what's the part of the equation that, what's the most important part of the equation? And eventually when you find our cast like we did, we kind of had it all in the two of them, which was really amazing to find, because time is getting closer and closer and closer to the start of shoot date. And you could draw this out for a very long time to find this needle in a haystack, so to speak. And we got very, very lucky.
And was that all online, all the casting? Was that, or were you ever in person?
It's pretty much online. I was actually talking to the casting director last night, and he was saying too, like, it's pretty much all online now. And I miss that, not being able to be in the room.
Me
with
too,
them.
man. Yeah.
Yeah. But on the other
that's
side,
weird. That's
it
weird.
made it very, that I was already in New Orleans, and, it made it possible for us to get right down to the wire too, like, and do it very efficiently. So there's pros and cons. It's not as intimate, but what you are able to do is just like we're doing in Zoom now, we would read the two of them together. They would do a chemistry read, and then one person would leave the room and they come in, and Drake would read with different actresses, and Meg would read with different actors. And in that way, it makes it very quickly because they can be wherever they want. And so,
right.
It makes it it's a level playing field. I mean, I know it sounds like Swahili to those of us who came up the in the room process, you know what I mean? Rob and Jensen and myself. But then again, for all you folks, for Meg and Drake and you guys coming up the process, at least your competition was facing the same challenge. I mean, everybody wasn't like some people were in the room, some people were digital. Everybody's coming in the same way. Like everybody's coming in the door the same way. So
totally true.
It kind of levels it out. So let's talk to you kids about your experience. What was your journey like auditioning for this show? Meg, you start.
It was really, really fun, I think, but also nerve-wracking. I didn't realize, being on Zoom could be, I feel like I'm even more nervous on Zoom because anything can happen. Your cat could come in, your computer can explode, etc. But I think
old exploding computers.
Technical stuff.
Every
day.
I have a follow-up question.
Nickel.
What brand is your computer, and why do you own that brand?
But the Zoom process was really fun, and reading with Drake was incredible. I feel like when I read with Drake, I knew from the start. I was like, oh, he's 1,000% going to be John no matter what. So I was like, hopefully I get casted with him because that'd be awesome. Because he was just so incredible. And yeah, I feel like it was, definitely nerve-wracking. Also, I've never played a character kind of like Mary before, where she's very dry, sarcastic, knows what she wants, kind of very strong. So playing that was definitely a challenge because the whole time I was like, am I doing this right? Yeah. And
conversely, we learned too from watching you. We learned that doesn't it might be written some way, but Robbie, who wrote it, was constantly fine-tuning his script just based on these reads because we get so much from you. It's the first time we're sort of hear it with, actual life, versus on the page.
Yeah.
It's a super important part of the overall process as well.
Now, Drake, let's talk about your journey, buddy. How did you come about being a part of this?
Yeah, it was long and painstaking. We did. Man, I obviously I was a big fan of the show. So when I saw the pilot come across, I was actually catering an event and I was reading it on my phone as I was supposed to. serving food. But yeah, we did the audition and then sent that in, everything virtually, obviously, like we were talking about. And then, yeah, we did what did we do? 9 different chemistry test sessions. It ended up being 27 hours total of just different.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Drake got the lion's share of chemistry reads. Unfortunately, he was a trooper. I just real quick, and I'll let you continue, Drake. I remember about halfway or 3/4 of the way through the whole casting process, I turned to Neil and I was like, "How the fuck did I ever get a job in this town?"
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that crazy. So yeah, sorry, Drake. Go ahead, man.
No. Yeah, it was crazy, and that's the thing is you have the actor brain of even on the. I think I didn't find out until I had it until the seventh test, and the entire time I'm just like, what are these guys doing? They're just bringing me in to read the script, and I kept feeling like I was fluffing up the other actors, So yeah, it was
right.
It's like a psychological thing of just learning to let go and just trying to enjoy the process of it all. And I ended up being able to do that. And it honestly was really, really beneficial. Kind of what Glenn was saying. You really learn that it's not personal. Nothing in the industry is personal. And there are just certain roles that aren't meant for you. And that doesn't mean that you didn't play them well, or it doesn't mean that you are an excellent actor, because many of the women who came in were phenomenal actresses, and any one of them could have played the role, but it would have been a different performance. It would have been a different version of Mary. And that's the thing you see opposite, right. And you can relate that to yourself of oh, cool. They're just trying to find the right John that they want. And if it's done right, every single person who comes in should give a different variation of what that John is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now you have an interesting job tasked to both of you, because you're not playing real people, but you're playing real characters that have been deeply established by multiple performers. And obviously nobody wants you to be those performers, but you are carrying the weight of those years of story being crafted, and the idea that there are things that have been planted in these characters in their future that you are now playing the past version of. It's a complex task. So how much of that, now that you're cast, now that you've got the job, how much of that plays into your process as you go story to story?
Oh, yeah. Largely, it's kind of cool because the thing I tell Meg all the time is I'm like, if we just rewatch Supernatural, we can steal everything that Jared and Jensen do, and the fans won't think that we're stealing it. I was like, they'll be like, oh, look, that's where Jensen and Jared got it from. We steal all the cool stuff. So that's been fun. But yes, I think it's a lot of fun. Obviously, we both know it's an incredible responsibility, because as much as we're not playing real characters, it does feel like that. And the fans certainly do treat it as if we are. And it's nice. It's a nice reminder that we have something here to service, and it is our job. So as much as we can go to set and just have fun, it's there's a responsibility at the end of the day. So, but yeah, it's been a ton of fun. And it's our histories, our research is right there. I'm pointing at my TV. And we were just watching Supernatural before, just to prep for this. We were just going through and looking up Mary's best moments and John's best moments.
Oh, funny.
We'll be right back. Thanks for supporting Supernatural then and now. And now,
early nominating contests build momentum for 2024 contenders seeking the White House. C-SPAN is the place for political campaign enthusiasts, with unfiltered coverage surrounding the early primaries and caucuses, as well as speeches from key battleground states. Whether you're interested in your state's race or want to follow all of the political events, you can get immediate access to what the candidates are saying, plus nominating results in real time with the free mobile app, C-SPAN Now, or watch live on the C-SPAN networks.
back to the show.
When was the first time you actually met each other in person?
In LA. After we got casted, also Nida, who plays Lata, was also there as well, because we're all in LA. So we met for the first time, and it was really fun. But definitely, he's a lot taller than I expected him.
Yeah, how tall are you? You seem like a tall fella.
Yeah, I'm 6'4", so Jensen, Jared's height.
Wow.
And I'm 5'3", so yeah.
That's one thing you don't get over Zoom.
No.
Yeah.
Right.
Until you see them together, and you're like, oh, All right.
You know, I spent a lot of years with Jensen talking about what a bitch it was being the 6'2" short guy. And I'm sure when you met Drake, you're like, son of a bitch. God
Exactly.
damn it.
Applebox is just all every day.
Yeah.
Just speaking of chemistry, like the first time they're meeting too, that's another big part of the equation too, with like, especially with the other actors as well, was just immediately seeing not just the chemistry on the Zoom, but like just with each other. It's so helpful. You know, as you guys know too, like having all of us been on sets, it's not always there behind the scenes. You might have it on screen, but if the actors don't have it with each other off camera, it's just better. And you four have this immediately we're all hanging out and running around to New Orleans together and like going on adventures, which I can see on Instagram. You still are, you guys, come on. And it was really like,
So
it
fun.
was really inspiring and fun. And it was just like, you know, Jensen, you know, after all that stuff where it can get kind of clinical, you're looking at tapes and tapes and trying to like, to see like just these four people coming together was really awesome. And it's perfect for the show. Like, and it reads, you know, it reads on screen.
It really does read. And the chemistry between you guys, it plays. I love the meet cute, you know, the first moment. It's really great. Now we talked, Glenn, you were talking about Robbie Thompson, of course, the writer of the show, the head writer of the show. Such a get. We loved him on Supernatural. He wrote some of my favorite episodes I got to do. Richard and he go way back. He's one of our favorite people. Jensen, what was the process like getting Robbie attached?
Hey, Robbie, we're doing this project. You want in? Yeah, that sounds great. Okay, talk to you later. That was
wow.
Tough
he was. I mean, I had to go.
Wow.
This was another part of that kind of sneak peek behind the curtain of how things get done that I wasn't overly aware of. In that we had to go to the studio and get the writer approved before we even ever went out to anybody, and then they have a list of people that are vetted and they feel comfortable giving a show to and stuff. So, you know, this is Robbie's first time show running. And that was a little bit of a hurdle we had to get over with the studio. They obviously had some opinions about that. And I said, look, this is the guy. Let him show you that he is the guy. And so I called Robbie and I said, hey man, this is the project. And you're the only one I can think of. You're the only one that I would want for this. There was literally a list of one. And so he was very interested, obviously. And he took the meeting with Warner Brothers and charmed the pants off him. And that was that.
He's so great because he's a fan of the show as well. And he writes like a fan of the show. I mean, it's that's what I really like about his writing, especially in this universe.
He calls me every now and again and he says, hey, I need to put this through the Dean generator. Or he'll call me and he'll just be like, hey, I need to speak to Dean.
You're like, just 1 second.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Hello. He just wants my the input of he's like, I got the best source possible right here. So that's been a good working relationship that we've had as far as like keeping things tonally, the continuity there tonally. And it's fun to be on this creative side of the process. Usually I'm at the point where I get the script and then I try to bring it to life. But now it's like conceptualizing what that script's going to look like. So it's fun.
So now we have Robbie Thompson being the architect here, writing the script and breaking the story and crafting the characters. And then in comes Glenn. When did you enter this process?
I entered, it was in mid-January. I was working on another project and I got sent the script. I like Robbie and I hadn't worked together. Jensen and I go way back to early Smallville days. And of course, my relationship with Warner Brothers and the studio goes back over several pilots. So it's, even though I actually never worked on Supernatural, I was very part of, there's very much the DNA of the show, or also a lot of friends of mine work on the show. And it shoots in my hometown, Vancouver. So it's just been a big, and even though Jensen and I haven't worked much together since then, it feels like, an old friend, an old relationship, and there was a comfort there. So I'd certainly watched my share of Supernatural, and David Nutter, who did the pilot for that, was also a friend and mentor of mine as well. But having not actually worked on the show, I had to sort of do a little bit of catching up. But I also felt it was super important for me not to and I don't know how you guys, we never talked about this, Jensen, but the fact that I wasn't part of that world, whether that was a concern or just even part of the process. But in some ways, I think it gave me, I didn't have the baggage of because I could sort of see it through the eyes of someone who maybe had not been as immersed as a viewer.
Right.
And I think we wanted this show to appeal to fans, but also new fans alike. So when I read the script for the first time, it wasn't sort of like, oh, I can't wait to see what they're doing with the supernatural. Like, I just read it as a story about two young people, just figuring out their lives at a very important juncture in their life. And it was also just fucking hilarious, right? Like the script was so funny and so engaging and moved like a freight train. Like, it was so fast and quick, and Robbie's writing is just so inventive, and it sort of had almost like a breezy quality in that sense of just boom, 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 stuff's happened. There's a joke said and you're moving on. And I don't know, I wasn't expecting that from it. And I just laughed, and I was like, oh my God, what's happening next? And like, obviously it changed during the prep process. Stuff came and went, and it became shorter. But I was just attracted to the story, like separate from the supernatural canon. Like, I was just attracted to the story and these characters. And I just thought Mary was just like so fresh and funny and interesting, and they already like, they come fully formed already before we meet them. And and again, the way Robbie crafted the scenes, you felt that, but it wasn't bogged down with exposition, and like you just got it from their little subtle personality quirks and the way they interacted. And because they're meeting each other for the first time in front of our eyes, as the audience, we're discovering who these people are the way that they're discovering each other, which is really kind of beautiful about a story like, that's crafted in this way. Right. It's starting with the meet cute, but then all the adventures that happen in a very, very short time for both of them. And like Drake meeting Jojo for the first time in the story is just like, who is this? And like, it was just great. It was a real privilege to be part of the process.
Yeah. One of the things I really liked, Glenn, obviously you knocked it out of the park with the pilot, or we wouldn't be sitting here talking about a pickup. But one of the things I thought was cool, and this is a Robbie moment that you then visualized really in a really cool way, was the Vietnam flashbacks. Was the story that is the John story that is such a core building block to who John is. We've been doing this podcast about Supernatural, and I've had Jensen on a bunch. Robbie and I've had Jensen on a bunch. We've had Jeffrey Dean Morgan on and Jared on, and talking about the father-son relationship, that Sam and Dean are only Sam and Dean because John was John. And Mary was Mary, but Mary was gone early in the picture, especially for Sam. So that John's fingerprints are so all over how those boys were raised, and how does he view manhood, and how does he view parenting and all that. And so much of that is formed from his war experience. Obviously the father-son element and all that stuff is going to be played out with Henry. But gosh, I mean, John going to war, what I loved is that you guys show that. It's not just a story he tells, but we're seeing flashes of that visual. And I don't know if that's something that continues in the series. I hope it is, because I think it's a really cool moment that really informs us about his journey. And I was curious about how that played out visually for you and everything else.
Jensen and Robbie really fought for it too. Like, this was super important to them right at the very beginning.
This was on the chopping block.
It was right up until
heavily
the week before, 2 weeks before.
Really?
The budget was over, and they were like, well, the obvious fix is to just get rid of the Vietnam Day.
Wow. And then, so how did you convince them not to? Like, what did you do, Glenn? Do you go, I'll just use one camera? How do you save it?
Jensen on them, first of all. No, well, Jensen has a very good relationship, obviously, with the studio and the network and Mark Pedowitz. And truly what we did is this is total behind the curtain stuff, but we basically had a big Zoom meeting like this. There were budget questions, as there always is. And we had to plead our case as to why this was, and it's so great that, Richard, that you're saying that, because what you're saying is exactly what we were saying all through prep. And I wasn't sure if it was ever going to happen, to be honest, because I've been down this road before. And we knew how important, we're talking about this, this efficiency that I was sort of talking about earlier about the script, and and the best way to show the ghosts that are haunting somebody or what, like that is, and it doesn't, as you can see, there's very little in it. It's just little flashes. I hope there will be more too in the future, by the way, but it so informs, Drake coming home from war, but also having this curiosity and this optimism, this sort of, it's an open field to him, the world. And so when he has that moment with his mom and she says, is everything okay? And you can see it in a beautiful moment in your eyes where everything's not okay, but you're hiding it. But I don't think you're like actually hiding it so much as like you just let the world in, and you're not going to get burdened by that stuff until it is pulled out of you. So just long story short, it was just a really important character beat that was also super dynamic. And, at one point, the whole pilot started in Vietnam. And it was like that was a cool way to get a fresh slate on, Supernatural fans would be like, what is this? It's a great way to root it in the 70s. And then it sort of through various machinations became the flashbacks as you see them. But yeah, it was. And it really was Jensen and Robbie having to and we all got together and we had to pitch, and we had all the executives from the network in the studio on the Zoom, and literally just had this talk like we're having now. And then we did have to we gave something up to, that wasn't as important. And we combined some stuff, and as we always do anyway. And that helped pay for it, but it certainly didn't, the studio very kindly heard our case and saw how important it was to all of us. And we kind of won it. And in some ways it was really one of the lovely moments, hey, Jensen, in the whole prep process, where we kind of won this little battle. And in the end, it wasn't even really they understood.
Yeah.
I remember the phone call too, because it was no at this level, then it was no at this level, and then it was no. And we took it all the way to the top. And it finally got to, without giving away names or anything, but it finally got to a level where, we were on the phone, and I was just basically setting it up as, this is a tent pole for this character. We have to have,
right.
We can't,
right. 100%,
we cannot,
100%.
We cannot just talk about this. It has to be seen.
Yeah. It's his backbone.
And we got really passionate about it. And the top executive basically was like, okay, I hear you. And I appreciate your passion. We'll make it happen.
You and I were at a convention, Jensen, and I remember you showed me a daily shot.
Oh yeah. I think it was the drone shot, Glenn.
Yeah, it was the drone shot. And you showed me when you cast Drake. You're like, all right, come here. It was like top secret. You're like, this is our John. I was like, whoa.
Get a load of this handsome asshole.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you put the mirror down and you showed him Drake.
So Drake and Meg, so coming into it, so that you start shooting, in terms of your characters, obviously, Samantha Smith played her in our show, and Jeffrey Dean Morgan was the grown-up version in our show. How much of their performance did you use? How much, at one point, obviously you got to let that go and just give your own performance. How much did that weigh into how you channeled the character?
I definitely watched clips of, Samantha's version of Mary 100%, because it's really helpful to see where Mary gets to. It's fun because our prequel is kind of just like context to all of that. But then at the same time, it is our own show. So having our own liberties, it's like this is our version of our story. So I think it's really fascinating because, it is the same Mary. It's the same strong opinion fighter, knows exactly what she wants. She's a leader. There are the same qualities. But I think on the pilot, it was the best part about playing Mary is also the most challenging part of finding that delicate balance of being such a badass fighter, but then at the same time finding little moments of vulnerability, especially with John, because, Sam, her dad, raised her, and her mom as well, raised her to just be a fighter and nothing else, and a hunter. And so I think it's kind of hard for her to open up in that way because she feels like she can't. So playing with those little moments was just really, really fun, but also challenging. So I definitely look to the older Mary for that, because her goals and Mary's goals in Supernatural are the exact same of they just want a normal life. They want to get out of hunting. They want to have kids, have a husband, and just get out of hunting. It's kind of heartbreaking once you know that.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But,
and I hear you that it's a challenge at the same time. But you go, okay, I'm going to make this my own. But when in doubt, I can go back to the source and see. Yeah.
And it is really fascinating how Samuel raising Mary is kind of the same how John raised Dean. So those parallels are really interesting because it's kind of this. Yeah. So that kind of helps as well.
To you, Drake, the same question Rob asked, which was how much of the performance of Jeffrey Dean Morgan and perhaps even Matt Cohen influence your take on it? And to Rob's point as well, so it's your own character. It's not you're not emulating them, but how much of that permeates what you're doing?
Largely, I would say 90% of what I'm doing is with Jeffrey Dean Morgan specifically in mind. Just because Matt Cohen's version is same age, I really didn't want to be influenced too much on how Matt was playing. But when it's the same character, same timeline, I was like, that could get a little sticky. But I'd already seen those episodes. But yeah, with Jeffrey Dean Morgan's performance, it's something that I talked to Robbie about immediately. Is when I read the pilot, I was just like, I knew it's crazy how this stuff is unfolding. Because when I read the pilot, I was like, gosh, there's so much potential in what they're doing with this and the vision that they have for the script. It's like there's actually like really something creative going on here. And I had this whole like idea of if I was ever going to play, John Winchester, this is what I would want to do, and the context that I would want to give Jeffrey Dean Morgan's performance, and we're able to do all that, and that's exactly what we're doing in the scripts. But yeah, I really view Jeffrey Dean Morgan's performance as like, I quote Breaking Bad a lot. Like he's the Heisenberg, and we get to go back to like Walter White, and we get to kind of like see how so it's like, yeah, I'm playing the same character, but I'm showing you the transition of how do you get from just Vietnam John at 19 years old to John who has 2 kids and taught them how to fight when we pick him up, and he's, what is he, 36 or something like that in the show. So I just kind of use it as like a spectrum. Like, he's the finished version, and I get to like fill in the pieces, and I get to play with him that way.
Yeah, that's so fascinating.
It's awesome.
It's funny. I keep Richard makes fun of me because I bring this up a lot, but I'm watching Better Call Saul right now, and I keep thinking about that because it's a prequel to an already established show, right? And it's fun as a viewer. It's just fun to watch. You're like, ooh, we get into the backstory, and that's what's so great about this show. And I've only seen the pilot, but which I love, by the way. You guys, everyone did such a great job across the board. And, Glenn, it's very Spielberg-esque. I love the sort of Indiana Jones moments. It's really terrific. Makes me very excited what's to come.
Thank you.
I had a question for Glenn, sort of the same question we asked Meg and Drake, but cinematically. So obviously you're coming in, call it fresh because you weren't part of the mothership,
right,
but the team, the players. Yeah. Did you feel like there needed to be a cinematic nod to anything that had come before, like them developing their characters? Or did you feel like, what, this is fresh eyeballs, I'm coming in this with my own movie to make?
I kind of would say it was the latter, honestly. Like, I talked to Robbie about that quite specifically, and he really didn't want to feel like there was a need to, like, we acknowledged elements of it in the story and in the themes and obviously in the characters, but I really did want it to be its own fresh movie. And so I didn't, as I said, like, I very much liked the tone of the pilot of Supernatural, and I love what David did with it and its raw, visceral quality. But this story is where Supernatural started was pretty dark, right? And quite unlike sort of how the show evolved over the years. And I felt this script was quite different than the Supernatural pilot script. And so I just felt it was its own, like, this quality, this sort of breezy fun. I wanted it to feel fun. I wanted it to feel epic. I love that it's a little bit of a jelly bean jar of tones. Like, you're in Vietnam, then, it's a coming home story, and then it's a romance, and then you're underground with crazy monsters. And I wanted to serve each scene to embrace that as much as possible. So I kind of feel like the beginning was its own little Indiana Jones kind of adventure. One of my favorite moments was, when Carlos takes out the demon with his van. Like, it's so unexpected and funny. Yeah. And so, and then it was just like when they first meet, what is the story we're trying to tell here? What is the chemistry? Like, that's my long answer, saying, I think we really did just look at it as its own thing, because there's so much to tie it already thematically, and people can pick out the Easter eggs and the nuances that these two are bringing to the role. And there's just so much to pay attention to that I just felt it was super important. If there was ever something that felt thematically a question or stylistically, like, did this, in the past, Robbie, did this ever come up? Or Jensen would, advise me constantly too. Like, he would come up to the monitor and sort of maybe a performance note, but often, like, he would have little nuggets that, he would throw out from all the experience he had on Supernatural when certain things came up. And so it was certainly part of our overall DNA, but it was not something that I specifically tried to emulate anything.
Yeah. Jensen, that's a great point. I mean, you're the best dramaturg of, Supernatural. You know what I mean? You were there, you lived it, so you can go, no, excuse me, this would never happen.
Yeah, we didn't have Kevin Parks on the set, so it was...
Exactly.
Kevin Parks was our first AD for all 15 seasons. Wow. And he was just a vault of Supernatural lore. Anytime there was like a question of like, wait a second, in season 4, didn't we kill a demon with this knife? Why can't we use this knife in season 14? And he's like, well, I'm glad you asked, because...
And I remember because it was snowing that day.
That's right. And we had an 8:00 crew call, and we took 4 penalties to get through lunch. And he supercomputer.
It's a supercomputer.
He's a supercomputer. So we call him Parksopedia. His name's Kevin Parks.
So Jensen, you're the narrator and you make an appearance in the first episode. Is that something that continues? Are you a narrator in every episode?
Yes. So every episode you'll hear Dean's voice kind of get us into the story, maybe put a little color throughout the episode, and then probably wrap up the story.
Great.
It's the Wonder Years, so to speak.
Yeah. Or How I Met Your Mother.
Or what's the other one? Kristen Bell did it. Is it Gossip Girl?
Maybe.
This is just like that. Yeah.
I think it's like, is this a test to see if we watched Gossip Girl?
Yes.
Because I haven't.
And season 5, episode 4 of Gossip Girl.
Well done, you guys. Well done. So you'll hear Dean throughout the show, and then as far as on camera appearance, there was the one in the pilot. There will be more in the future,
yes.
But that'll be a little further down the road once I finish playing sheriff in Montana.
Hey, this is Jeffrey Dean Morgan. We are going to take a quick break. Hey, it's Jeffrey D. Morgan again. Welcome back to the podcast.
Here's a question for you, Meg. So Drake gets these opportunities in this script to literally do the Vietnam flashbacks, to have that sort of backstory element, that key backstory element served up to him visually. He gets a chance to act it, to put on the helmet and the boots and have at least a piece of that to carry with him forward. Your backstory, though discussed, it's not flashback to. We're not witnessing that. So what was your process like, and what is your process like in carving out Mary's backstory that made her, what put Mary where she is now and continues to propel her forward?
Yeah, I mean, even just talking about it in the pilot and in the further episodes, it's like really, truly heartbreaking that, her parents gave her a knife when she was 5, and before she could even understand the concept of what everything was in life, they're like, oh, monsters are real and you're going to kill them and this is your job. And starts hunting at 5 years old and killing things and understanding kind of what the hunting world is about. And sometimes when you kill monsters, after you kill them, it turns back into a human. And all of that is just so dark in itself, let alone having to always protect the people around her, seeing so many people die around her, I think really makes her kind of shell up and is really hard for her to be vulnerable. So the whole time, especially in the pilot, like what me and Glenn and everyone worked on is kind of like in the scenes, like you can always see her thinking about wanting to say something, but then always like holding back because she's like, if I say this, then, or, you can always kind of see the darkness behind her of how she wants to get out of hunting so bad because she's seen so much, but she truly knows deep down, like she believes that there is really no way to, even though she's hopeful. So I think the heartbreaking part about Mary is that she kind of knows that there really is no way out of hunting because everyone says it all the time,
If you look at, it's really interesting. I think Robbie's done a really fantastic job, but he's utilized kind of the Kripke playbook from early Supernatural because there's a lot of character motivations in even the first pilot episode of Supernatural, where you've got Sam he's rejecting the life. He doesn't want to be a hunter. He wants to get out. So that plays into what Mary's going through right now. But then you also have the part of Dean, who's a seasoned hunter, seasoned fighter. This is what he does. So you've got that with Mary as well. But then you look at what Drake's doing with John, and you've got the Dean aspect of, this is what I'm born to do. This is what we do. This is why we do it. It's this, there's no other way. So he's got that motivation. But then he also, like Sam, hits his head when he walks through door frames. So they're very, very similar. But there is a lot of both characters in both of these characters.
Yes.
And it's a really nice juxtaposition, I think, that Robbie has kind of crafted, utilizing what we know of the mothership and what we know did well. And it's really fun to watch Meg and Drake kind of play both Sam and Dean within their performances.
I feel like Mary's kind of like Dean right now, but she wants to be Sam, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I think.
Yep. Interesting. Yeah.
I just had the thought because Drake's performance really reminded me of Jared a little bit, that like it would make sense that the father, that the son that he had the most complicated relationship with, he kind of looks like, you know what I mean? That just made I'm no psychologist, but that just made sense to me from the psychological level. It's fun. I just love the prequel aspect of this. So you can kind of piece that together for yourself. Like that's Drake. And then you get to say an iconic line from Supernatural, which is saving people, hunting things, that Dean made very famous in our show. And for many seasons, they would play that right before the show. You said you watched, so you were a fan of the show. Was that ever like, oh crap, I'm saying this line? Am I going to say it? How should I say it? Or was that a big deal?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, all those things. And we just had a trailer drop, and we're sitting there, and I was just like, I had to like pause it and let it go because the music was Wayward, Carry On My Wayward Sons. And I was just like,
oh, wow.
It's just that it's those things where it's like, it's so surreal to be a part of something that you grew up watching, and then you get the same lines, or we get to do this. You know, it's like eating any pie in the show. I'm like,
you got the right guy. He's done his homework. He knows the show. You got the right lead actress. It's a perfect match. But it's a funny moment to think of, Jensen. You're at the monitor, and that line comes up, and Drake turns and goes, "Can I change this? Maybe it's not safe." You're like, this doesn't really like.
Doesn't
really
fall
crap.
off the tongue. It's a little.
Oh
clunky,
no! Saving people, hunting. How about I like to hunt? And I mean, how about give me a couple of
this while we're at it. Let's.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you're like loading the pistol.
I will say,
I feel like things is too broad.
Let's be more specific. I will say that Drake nailed that line. Like I couldn't have been happier with that performance. Yeah. It was so perfectly executed in a way that wasn't too wink, wink, nod, nod, but it was just it made total sense the way he said it, why he said it in that moment. And it was just a stellar performance. Fun fact for you, that line, I obviously said that in the pilot of Supernatural. Years later, they were still using that for like trailers and sizzle reels and stuff like that. I had to go in and re-record it because my voice had changed so much. So
that's funny.
You were hearing like, Dean's like, "What are we doing, Sam?" And then they'd be like, "Hunting things, saving people, the family business." So I had to go in and re-record it with like Dean's now voice.
Saving people, hunting things.
Yeah, my voice cracking.
I still think that probably when Drake was saying it, you were off camera like a pageant mom mouthing it with him.
He was in my ear the whole time. I had the earpiece in.
Yeah. Saving.
Smile.
Saving.
Smile.
Like, man, this is so exciting. Yeah. I mean, it's been talked about. Jensen talked about it for while the process was going on and giving us snippets. And look, but for the fact that Eric Kripke, Jared Padalecki, and Jensen Ackles and Bob Singer all made such a great show, we wouldn't be here. And obviously, we're David Nutter directing a brilliant pilot, and all the things that had to come to pass 17 years ago to make this conversation even happen. But in between there and now were so many roadblocks, so many things that could have slowed the process down and not gotten us here. And it's so exciting to be, as much as it's Jared and Jensen's show, I know I feel like a proud dad myself because I've been a part of it for so many years. And it's so exciting to watch this come to fruition. And I always say this, I truly, even if I didn't think you two were perfect, I'd sit here and say you are because it's a podcast. But BS aside,
you actually
truly
are perfect.
You really are.
You're perfect for the roles, man. I mean, you're great in the pilot. Your chemistry, I mean, Glenn said it. You can't put your finger on chemistry. You just can't. You can't fabricate it. It's either there or it's not, and you guys have it, and you're crushing your work on the show. And may I say, you're crushing your leadership roles on set. The reputation is already being built. It's already being passed along. We already know what kind of team leaders you are, and I'm proud of you, and I'm excited for this show. And it's just great. And my hat's off to you, Glenn, for the excellent leadership and stewardship of the vision that is now the template. So it's just fantastic.
And to Jensen for bringing it all to us. So
and to Danielle for dealing with Jensen and producing the show.
And she's right now dealing with everything that I'm just like, I don't want to mess with that. I don't.
Yeah, well, I get it. And, thank you. Robbie Thompson's not here. Danielle Ackles isn't here, but thank you to both of them for, again, making this show a reality. This is such a special moment Thank you guys for coming on and having this conversation. As we get more into this, let's come back. Let's do this again. Pretty please.
Yeah, good.
Such a pleasure.
Thanks,
guys.
everybody.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Yeah, it's such an honor. Thank you guys.
Bye. Well, that was great, man. That was so special.
They're just, I mean, it's exciting. Weirdly, I'm just so excited for the whole process. I just hope I hope it's the home run it deserves to be. Obviously, we're all friends. We don't know Meg and Drake, but we like them already, and we'll be seeing them so much in the future, and that's so great. And Glenn is such a great addition to the team. But just to have Robbie Thompson, Jensen, Donnelly, our buddies, making this happen.
Yeah, just really special, and they seem like just lovely people, and really that's what it came down to with Supernatural. So Jensen and Jared are such gentlemen, and that it made its way down, and that's one of the reasons we loved working on the show. And it looks like these two actors are the same.
Couldn't agree more. So excited for them and their co-stars and Robbie and everybody involved in the production. It's going to be a great time.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll be back next time with another episode of the Then and Now podcast. But in the meantime, hope you enjoyed the Winchesters, and we will see you soon.
This episode of Supernatural Then and Now was hosted by Richard Speight Jr. and Rob Benedict.
Executive produced by Rob Benedict, Richard Speight Jr., and Stephen Hine.
Produced by Laura Craig and Thomas Fowles.
Edited and associate produced by Trey Booty.
Oh, what's up, Booty? Special thanks to our friends at Nerds and Beyond.
Hey, the music was provided by Tim Wynn.
The episode was recorded with the help of Sonic Fuel Studios.
This podcast is from Story Mill Media.
Wait, we're recording?
And be in a more echoey room. Good Lord. What are you, in a stone cavern?
No, it's my new microphone.
Holy cow.
It sounds great.
Yeah, it's not plugged in.
Caves of the World with Jensen Ackles.
All right, so for starters, I'm going to say...
Are you supposed to plug these things in?
Yeah, you plug them in normally.
You plug it in. I'm not going to tell you where.
Story Mill Media.